hydrogen peroxide as a molecule, it is fairly unstable. So if we compare it to water, for example, we all know that is H2O. So that's two hydrogen atoms and joined with one oxygen atom. And that's fairly stable, right? It doesn't randomly explode, it doesn't fizz, doesn't burn, doesn't really deal much. So it's fairly stable. But hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So it's basically water but with one oxygen atom added on. And that makes it unstable. And what the hydrogen peroxide wants to do is it wants to separate or decompose into water and oxygen. And if you were to, say, have a glass of hydrogen peroxide and leave it out in the sun for a while, it will naturally start to decompose into those products. So when we put hydrogen peroxide in an ear, what the hydrogen peroxide will do is it will make contact with whatever's in there, but primarily it will be, the reaction will occur because the hydrogen peroxide will make contact with something called catalase. And catalase is an enzyme. So an enzyme is just a very, very complicated protein, but catalase is an enzyme that's inside your body. It's inside all of the tissues and cells that are inside your body. So it's very, very common. It's also inside plants and bacteria and things. And catalase, one of its main jobs is to deal with the hydrogen peroxide that's produced inside your body naturally anyway. So it turns hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen, just as I explained. And the catalase will be present in dead skin cells that are incumbent inside the earwax. And of course it'll be in the skin cells, the dead skin cells that are lining the ear as well. So the hydrogen peroxide goes in, meets the catalase, and then it will go through this very quick reaction where the hydrogen peroxide will turn into water and oxygen. And it's the oxygen that is released that creates these bubbles that you see. It sort of effervesces. And the theory is that this kind of mechanical movement created by the effervescence will somehow help the earwax break apart, dissolve, and otherwise disperse. How effective that really is debatable. So, I mean, there's not much research into this area at all, but the research that we do have, as sparse as it is, tells us that there really isn't much difference at all between hydrogen peroxide, sodium bicarb, oil, water. Okay, they're all just as effective as each other. So if we go just by the research, then I can't really see a huge amount of point in using hydrogen peroxide given that it's caustic. So if they're all as effective as each other, you might as well use oil. So just oil is going to irritate your ear canal. It's hydrogen peroxide. And anecdotally, I've found that people who use a lot of hydrogen peroxide drops, it tends to turn the wax into this kind of soup or slurry, which I've mentioned in other videos. And more often than not, that slurry kind of travels deeper into the ear and kind of slicks up against the eardrum, which is then a nightmare to clean and makes the patient feel even worse. So typically, if I had an earwax blockage, I would just use olive oil. So that's just me. So here we have what is it? Very dark, almost black piece of wax here, and I'm struggling to get it out of the ear canal. So I'm going to apply some olive oil here. So I'm just going to slurp up the residue here with a suction probe, and the olive oil will actually lubricate the ear canal, so I can actually just drag this piece out. So you can see how easily that's coming out there. Application of the olive oil, and it will now just clear up. So you can see just on the left-hand side here, we've got some residual debris, and we've actually got a very dark, large piece of earwax which is right down near the eardrum. I rather suspect that it's actually resting on the eardrum. And at this point during the procedure, the patient felt like the ear was much better, but the hearing wasn't quite 100%.